Welcome to the Lifepro podcast, where today I have the pleasure of having David Van Beekum, who is the co-founder of Tweeva. And our topic today is AI and how it affects our lives and relationships. But before we get into the topic, how are you today, David?
Hey, good. I'm doing pretty good. I got a little bit of getting over the cold, but I'm doing good today. It's a good Wednesday. How about yourself?
Doing really well. Excited to have this conversation because obviously AI is really a hot topic, especially among my friends and I. And it's really changed how I do things and made things a little bit more efficient. So I'm excited to really delve deep. But before we get into that, why don't you give us a little quick background on yourself and your journey in life?
Yeah, sure. I agree. The AI is really taken over. It's what we dreamt about, I think, and watched in our little cartoons and movies when we were growing up. Like the AI is taking over. So I grew up in tech. I had a father that was electrical contractor, though I think he should have probably been an engineer, some sort of electrical engineer. He loved to tinker with different things, but I grew up around tech. So I had a 16 channel mixing board underneath my bunk bed at probably 8 years old. I had a reel to reel, tape recorders, two VCRs, a video mixer. Like I had the works in the media production side. But then I ended up moving over to computers and tech and programming, databases, software, built like 60 million record financial database to track stocks and prices and stuff like that. And then, I just kept on that software development range for a while. But I grew up around tech. I got to see all these transitions from no internet to the slow dial-up speed. And now, I have fiber in my house, laughing like if the kids say something's loading, I'm like, guys, you have 983 megabytes a second. You imagine what
Yeah.
33.3 or 33.6, what was it?
Yeah.
Kilobytes?
Yeah.
KBS, right?
Yeah. And then if you got a phone call, you get disconnected.
Yes. So it was like a different world, then. And
Yeah.
so I've grown up around it, but I'm happy. We're building a startup now called Tweeva, and just really excited about everything that's happening in the technological world. But I think you'd agree it's moving so fast.
Really fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could definitely relate to a lot of those things. I grew up tech, and I remember back in the day, I don't remember what year it was, but I begged my parents to buy me an Apple IIe. And we spent thousands of dollars on a used computer system that was like, running very basic operations. But I've always been extremely fascinated with technology. I tend to be an early adopter on things where, I had I was among my friends, the first to get an electric car, among my friends to get a smartphone. Like these things, I've just always like fascinated with technology, and I like to experiment with things like that. So, AI for me has been more of a recent thing. I would assume it's been out for a little while, but I use ChatGPT like all the time, to write letters and documents. And it's really like, it's changed my world. Where do you see where do you see the potential of AI? Where do you see this thing going? Are we going to have robots like, cook dinner for us? Like where are we going with this?
Hey, I already bought one of those, I explained to people, like, you've seen it, right? And they're like, no, it's the sous vide. They call it sous vide, and it's a refrigerator,
uh,
and it's not a toaster oven, but it's a water filled. It's a refrigerator and it's an oven, water filled, and then it has a burner in it. What are those light bulbs, xenon bulbs or something?
okay.
So it can cook the food instead of just warm it. It can actually
Wow.
cook your vegetables. I don't know, forget the word, like brown the vegetables on the
Yeah.
top. And so you can start it in the morning, and it knows what temperature is inside and at what time it needs to start for the optimal temperature to finish
Right.
your lunch at 12:15. So if that's what's available today, yeah, I would imagine probably in a few years there will be an arm, which I also have an arm robot that you can control to do certain things. But that AI it's gone so fast, I think. So I'm thinking back to the first time when I heard about it, it was many, many years ago. And it was really on the financials first, because that's where they're looking for efficiencies in doing daily tasks. And if you look back, the first time you had those efficiencies was with that personal computer. So you had a huge move in the market, in the general markets, with Compaq, right? With HP and with IBM, when that personal computer hit the markets. And that just caused so much movement in companies, because they said, hey, this person doesn't have to do these manual tasks anymore. The computer can take over, and you have to invest in the computers. So throughout the 90s, you had major companies, I mean, late 80s and 90s, right? Purchase the computers, and that worked for many, many years. What, 30 years we had those? And now we're to 2020. And even before 2020, I think AI was out there, but I think people name them more algos, they would say, right? An algorithmic thing.
Yeah.
AI, I believe, is the term that they're using to sell the algorithm name. Just like you had hosted servers, and then when they wanted to sell them, they were called cloud computing, right? Like, we always had data centers since the 70s. So we've seen this move from this AI piece to what it's called now. Instead of algo, it's called AI. But I think what it's doing is the same thing that the computer did, right? So now that everybody has computers, we're going to try to figure out what processes are not efficient that we could create efficiencies for. And they could be things like editing a video clip or editing a photo. I know Photoshop has released a version where you can highlight. They used to have like the healer brush. Now you have this, like, you can type in a chat GPT prompt to say, remove this piece or add a hat. You can select someone's head and say, add a red hat to this person, and it will actually do it. So there's a lot of positive applications to using AI, as long as, you know, we don't hurt, I think, people's jobs, which is a lot of, I think people are worried about it. But don't you think back in the 80s and 90s, that was the same talk of, oh, if we bring these computers in, we'll lose our jobs, right? But what did it do? It really moved the whole economy in a positive direction, because now you need people to teach people how to use the computers. Then you need to service the computers. The computers break down. There's new versions. Every year there's a new version. So I think it's going to be a positive thing overall, but it definitely is a conversation, because it may not be a 30-year piece. We may get to the peak in 5 years or 10 years. Right.
And I think that's what's happening with the advancement of technology. Everything moves faster. Even when you spoke of the markets, like we used to have to wait until we had a newspaper to see what our stocks are doing. Now we're at a point where it's all instant. Everything just moves quite faster, and the economy moves faster as well. So I want to touch on one thing that you talked about, like the difference between an algorithm and artificial intelligence. And I guess my understanding of artificial intelligence is that it self-learns, and it keeps improving its algorithm on its own. I think that's where it kind of differentiates from what we grew up as an algorithm to what now has become artificial intelligence. And, you know, I know there's been various movies about, you know, artificial intelligence taking over the world and like killing all of us. And I think there's a fear, like how is what, you know, what is going to be the negative? Like, what are going to be the challenges for us as artificial intelligence develops and, as you mentioned, takes jobs? You know, are they going to take more jobs than they create more jobs? Is really what the worry is.
Yeah, I think that worry is that we've had 30 years to digest the computer, and then it's 30 years for my mom to get an iPad, right? Or to understand what a Trio 650 was. Because when I was younger, I would carry on a Trio 650. Before that, it was an HP Palm Top. Do you remember those? Incredibly expensive, non-useful, heavy devices. But I thought it was great, you know? But what would it take for someone to digest that content and info? It takes years. And so this is the problem with, that's what we're worried about, is with AI. Will AI move faster than what we can actually perceive, digesting that information, and then just realizing, okay, this might be the direction I need to go? The computer's already made those decisions and said, yeah, you have to go this direction. So we're going to have that, I think, a moment in time where there will be that distrust of, I can't trust this. and there'll be a group of people that just like, I rely on this. I was on a podcast. We were talking about if you had a robotic arm and a doctor, and the robotic arm was 99.9%, and the doctor was 98%, which one would you choose to do a surgery? And I said, well, it depends on who you ask. And they're like, no, you'd have to say. And I'm like, no, it really depends on the age that you would ask. Because if you asked a younger person that grew up around technology, they most likely would say, well, what if he has a heart attack? How old is he? They're going to look for the negative sides of having the surgery, right? Where a person that has that human relationship and maybe have shook more hands than typed letters on the keyboard, he's going to pick that human interaction. So there probably will be always a market for both, but there will definitely be some negative downsides. I think in the trust of what it is, of how it goes, or how it, which jobs it may touch, which I think it's touched a lot of them.
Right. I mean, I'm more, we've talked about this offline, is I'm concerned about my kids, right? And, you know, you and I had growing up had to write essays. Well, how do we prevent them from using ChatGPT to write essays, and how do teachers validate these things as authentic? You know, they won't have to think for themselves. Like we really don't have to think for ourselves by using artificial intelligence. I mean, we can pretend like we're a lot smarter than we are.
Yeah, I think that is a main problem. If you're going to do this digital communication with people, and then you're going to sit down and realize, hey, you don't speak like that, right? Or you're not speaking fluent sentences like your email did or your marketing did. And I think that's possibly why a lot of, you could say, the population or the marketing world has gone towards that more real influencer type marketing, because people are looking for that real person to do business with or to buy a product from. They don't want necessarily something that's perfect and polished.
Yeah.
So are we going too far? That's like the question. Are we going too far with the AI?
Yeah. And who's going to regulate whether it's too much or it's, you know, something that doesn't benefit society? Like there's going to be no regulation.
Yeah. That's part of the problem. And is it going to move too quick? Right? What is it going to do? You've seen those robots, right, with Boston Dynamics, and then I know Elon Musk is coming out with them now.
Yeah.
You know, okay, they're going to take over the warehouses.
Right.
That's a lot of jobs. So what do? Well, scale up the population. Like in my mind, I quickly think scale up the population. Well, now they're talking about a decrease in population. So you put those two on a matrix. Those don't go well together. A lowering population and robots taking over. So I think if you were growing in population, and robots were taking some of the bottom end jobs or something that's physical related, and we had to bring everybody up to new mental type of jobs, thinking jobs, that would be a positive. I think that'd be a positive for the whole entire world to bring everybody to a new level.
So let's talk about how AI is going to affect our relationships. Like recently I was out to dinner and I looked over at the table. There was a group of young kids, probably about like 6 or 7 of them. Every single one of them was on their phones texting. I don't know if they're texting each other or texting other people. Like they start, that communication now is through technology, not so much physical. So how much is AI going to affect our ability to really communicate, like as we did growing up, or maybe something that's a little bit healthier than just texting?
Yeah, I think that the AI would help in that digital side of communicating. Again, it's going to be, though, will it be more of that fake trust? If you haven't met the person, wow, their texts are really great. I mean, I've seen these where you can add on to your iPhone. I'm sure Android has it too. Rewrite that text message before you send it. I'm not sick at work, but hello, I'm really sorry for this. I'm late. It's like, it's not that person texting that person. It is Chat GPT or some form of it going into it. I don't think that's a healthy thing. It's polite. It's very nice, but I don't think it's real. I think it is the future in some sort of way. But I'm not sure how society will deal with it in a positive manner. I think there was always been a little bit of I don't like that technology. I mean, I felt that from my grandparents when I would bring in the computer and they would say, "Oh, that's just a fad," or "That's just something."
Yeah.
But it will be probably integrated to different pieces. You walk into a restaurant and it will know you like this kind of food or you don't like these kind of items. Will the menu rearrange on your phone based upon your interests?
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
Yeah.
Um, does the server know that? I don't know. They're talking about servers going away. So will it touch relationships? Yeah, I think it will touch relationships, but it will always be that constant battle of how do I disconnect, um, and then do the real human interaction
Yeah.
besides, well, what, maybe until we get the neural links?
Yeah. I mean, I know I've heard stories of like refrigerators kind of being able to see what you have, what you're low on. If you're low on milk, it'll automatically order milk for
Yeah.
you, and eggs, and like really have that intelligence to know what you want. So all this is this, I mean, is it going to make us just lazy, or is it going to allow us to maybe put our energy towards other things rather than maybe mundane tasks like reordering groceries?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be in a positive manner, just like the computer was. AI is just another piece of that. It's a more powerful computer in the cloud that learns. So I'm looking positively towards anything that's using
Yeah.
AI. I think it allows you to let's talk about the human relationship there for a minute. Okay, so you're spending 2 hours, 3 hours a day going through your email box trying to do a specific something. Is that better talking to somebody? Helping somebody through a problem. Let's say you're in some sort of business that, well, any type of business, you could be on the phone and build a relationship with someone. That's more useful than a mundane task, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's more positive.
But even before AI, we're speaking, as a general population, we're spending less time speaking on the phone and more texting and emailing. So it's, I mean, without AI really being a big part of our world, it's already impacted us. I think this is going to make things even worse as far as being able to communicate. I think a lot of our younger generation is having trouble communicating, and now you're putting in the ability to autocomplete or suggested texts on our phones. I fear that it's going to make us more reliant on technology and less on our brains.
Yeah, I think that will happen. There will be probably, instead of computer courses at the local library, there'll be human courses. Something like this is
It'll be the opposite. Yeah.
yeah, how to talk to somebody when you meet them.
Right.
Because I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I know this AI component where it will text people and it'll get them on
Yeah.
the calendar and you can
Yeah.
sit down and talk to them. Okay. All right, great. But you still need to talk to them. You still need to bring
Yeah.
them through a sales process. And that's going to be more important for the future generation than knowing how to send an invite email. And so
Yeah.
that's, I kind of look at AI as it can do some things maybe 20 years in the future. Maybe it will be able to get on the phone and invite somebody. But for where we're living right now, you still have that human component and it's
Yeah.
very important and it needs to be there. Um, but in the future, yeah, it is a little bit worrisome to where it could be. And I think that's
Yeah.
why we're having the conversation.
Right.
I kind of feel like we're having the conversation because we already kind of know that it's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
somewhere in the background, a lot of this is probably algos and AI happening. I'm actually a robot, no. But but like think about it, in 20 years, you might wonder because I've seen these model your voice. I think even Descript has this. You
Yeah.
have to speak into the microphone for 20 minutes, and with a text in the editor, you can actually change one of your words
Yeah.
and it will do the best it can. But if you think about it, again, that's scary because could you call somebody and I don't know if you're going to do a sales pitch, but you could might get over a basic conversation of like, hey, how are you doing today? You know, and that's scary when you think about 20 years from now
Yeah.
where that could be, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the early stages, it's of AI, I'm sure you've had the experience of calling in customer service and getting like a or artificial message, or you have to kind of go through and you can talk to them and they try to help you. And it's this form of AI, and it's frustrating because sometimes it's not 100% perfect, and
Yep.
it could get frustrating and having that human element. But going back to what what we were talking about, I think really is the point of our conversation. Is it starts with acknowledging and being aware of how technology is affecting us, and be conscious of how important it is to have that human element and that human connection, and not being 100% reliant on technology to run your life. And having young kids, my daughter just got her first cell phone. It's been a few months, and she's constantly on her cell phone, right? So, and
Mhm.
it's our job as parents to be able to regulate that and make sure that we're not crossing the line to a point where it's detrimental to her, life and
Yeah.
happiness and experience, and becomes like
I have those conversations too of like, oh, are they spending too much time? Or it was before they're not spending enough time because we were
right,
trying to withhold it. And
yeah,
then I remember back in my history of, oh my word, I probably spent so much time in front of the 286 computer that I had
yeah,
playing Commander Keen or SimCity 2000. But it wasn't internet access. It wasn't anybody else. It was kind of, it was a little bit of play, but it was also a little bit of work, it's good, I think, but there has to be a balance there because I've seen advertised even, and the kids will say it too. I saw this like AI thing you can talk to. I'm going like, that could be scary.
yeah,
When you start replacing people with some sort of an I don't see that going very well for the humans in
yeah.
general, right? Do you?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that's probably a negative kind of thing. And I think maybe people will point to that. Some will think it's positive. I don't think so. I think that's going to be AI could be taken for that robot algo. It's
yeah,
done mundane tasks. It can look at calculation of taxes. It can sort out receipts. Don't get too deep into that the human element side because you're going to have to reteach that whole next generation
yeah,
a lot of things, human relationships, how to deal with empathy, happiness. It's probably why they're pushing that mental health awareness now
right.
because they're seeing this happen, and you got to put people in place for the next 5 or 10 years. I, I don't know. I don't understand why else it would be there except for the technology taking a place of some of these relationships. That should be dealt with in a local community basis.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about Tweeva.
So Tweeva is a local TV channel, right? So it's a place for humans to kind of take that out of their phone and kind of broadcast it and find out who people are in the community. So I wanted a way that maybe you're sitting at the bar or you're at a local restaurant that you could post something that you like on a TV, or you might be talking to somebody about a vacation you were just on, and you could post something on a display. And somebody else, you might be talking to them about it, and instead of on this little tiny screen, you could show them in a big screen, maybe where you've been. And maybe somebody next to you would say, hey, I was there a couple years ago. And it builds these local relationships between you and somebody else that's also there.
Right.
And maybe not even local. Maybe you're at the beach, you go to a coffee shop, and you want to put up a cool picture that you finally got up on your surfboard, right? And someone's like, hey, you need some help, your footing's off. And now you start this little relationship. So um, it's a really great startup, and we're trying to build it out to help small businesses and communities connect with people with a little bit of technology.
That's great. How can people do you have a website or something that you could share about
Yeah,
your
yeah. So
services? And
Tweeva.com, and we also have a mobile app in the store. So you go download the mobile app, Tweeva, Tweva. And then also we have like a landing page set up for if you're an influencer or you're a business owner and you want a box, you can install it in your business. You can go to connect.tweeva.com. And we'd love to have you. If you're a small business and you have some traffic, like you're a restaurant or a medical office and you have a TV, this is a way to kind of invite people to kind of add content and also show up a little bit of your services to the people sitting around saying, hey, I didn't know they did this service. Or there might be a coffee shop right down the street that a medical office or a barber shop could show. So it
right,
really kind of creates this tight knit community that we've lost, I think, through that, the COVID shutdown. I think a lot of
right,
people kind of went to their phones and said, okay, I'll just try to do everything I can on my phone. And we
right,
said, okay, this is a problem. Let's try to fix this one, you know?
Well, congratulations on that. It's a remarkable idea and it's phenomenal. And I'm excited to see it grow in popularity and realize its potential. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed our conversation today. I learned, reflecting on AI and the potential. I'm really excited about it. I don't, I'm in the same camp as you. I don't really, I do see the downfall, but I think the benefits will outweigh the negatives, and as a society, we'll learn to adapt. And I think we all need that human connection, and that won't be, hopefully, won't be compromised too much. So I've learned a lot. One thing that I ask all of my guests is, what's one thing that you want to teach the world? Doesn't have to be AI related, but is there a message you have for everybody that you want them to take away?
Well, teach, I don't know if I'm the person to teach, but I'll say that from spending so much time behind the computer, I I think I missed a little bit of the networking and the people and the relationships.
Yeah.
But I was actually happy with that. I would say I'm more of the introvert, but I hope that I can do my part in helping people get a little bit more connected. And it's funny because I have like a foot on both sides, right? I have the foot in the technology side, but then the other side is like, you got to bring the kids out into the world. You got to help them connect to other people. And though I think in the past, I was always like, well, I can create an application that can do these specific pieces, but on the other side, there's still a human.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I want to bring is just don't lose those little connections that you have. Those are the most important, and that's what makes a lot of people happy. So don't lose those connections. Don't get too much on your phone. Stay connected in your local communities. That's what I don't know if I'll teach, but I'll suggest.
Yeah, and I love that because, it's all about balance, right? And I love technology because Facebook, Instagram, all these social media apps have allowed us to keep connected to people that we normally would not. Like I'm connected to people I went to high school, elementary school, met throughout my lives, like, thousands of people, right? These are people I would have never stayed in touch with, and I'm allowed to like stay, kind of get a little glimpse of their lives. And when I do see them in the real world, I'm able to connect with them a little easier. So I definitely love technology, but I also believe that there is boundaries and that you need that, balance between the human actual physical connection and the virtual connection that we have via technology. So, it's all,
Meeting 8 people at a coffee shop
right.
is very different than a Zoom call with 8 people. Like
Exactly.
it just is different. Or 8 people drinking a beer on Friday night watching the game is so different than a Zoom call or a live streaming video game. Like it is very different, but I think on both sides, you kind of think the other side is a little bit weird. But working so much in tech, like it sometimes is a push to say, get out and go do something. But it is so important. It is really important.
Yeah, and I'm very much like you. I'm a little bit more of an introvert. I like to work by myself. My office, I'm here by myself, and that's where I'm most efficient. But, I also kind of like come out of my comfort zone and get out there and talk to people and find that balance. So
yeah, because you never know what that one relationship would create in 5 years, right? Or what happened 5 years ago that you weren't there that now had bloomed with somebody else of a financial backer or a program or something that you could possibly use today, but you weren't there back then. And so, I get the efficiency too, but those human pieces are so important. And for the conversation, it's really great because we're talking about AI. It's like, you still have to focus on those pieces,
Yeah, because your message a lot of times with technology is mistranslated. Like, we say one thing and people take it another way because it's just a text message, and it's really hard to like, we have that body language, we have that like, like that connection you have with somebody in real life, not even with Zoom. Like you don't get the same thing with Zoom. So yeah, I definitely 100% agree with that. And I think, the going through COVID and the pandemic allowed us really to be like, understand the importance of the human connection, because we were all kind of isolated for so long. And then when we got back to reality in normal life, we realized, what we were missing. So I think that in a way was kind of a positive spin on the pandemic.
I see a future with technology and people. I think
Yeah.
the first huge spike and crash was because people thought they were going to do technology themselves. I seriously think the
Yeah.
first huge NASDAQ move was, look what I can do by myself or with 5 or 10 employees. And I think they missed that it's people. So
Yeah.
I think with people and tech,
It's a
it's a
combination.
lot. Yeah, it's a huge advantage. I think if you cap AI on there too, wow. I mean, it could go for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
So if COVID was anything, it was like a teaching experience because my kids will say, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
Well, what about this? Never doing it again. What about this? I'll never. So I just wonder, okay, how many people are going to feel the same way? When
Yeah.
something happens in the future, they don't have a problem meeting up at the office. They want to go have
Yeah.
that human relationship. They want to brainstorm. They want to laugh, drink a beer and have fun, but it's part of the bigger cause or process. And
Yeah.
so then when does the crash happen there? If everything's digitized and everything's running on good relation, well, people are people, but right. You get what I'm saying. If everything
Yeah.
else is digitized, then you're just kind of working with the people now.
Right.
So where does that come crashing down? It's a lot sturdier. It's not perfect, but it is more sturdy than something that maybe has been written on a piece of paper, right? And maybe the booking was done on paper.
Mm.
You know, if an AI can look 6 months or 12 months forward in the future and say, hey, you got to change this, and this because the graph's starting to move down.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have that conversation tonight, today, tomorrow. It's telling you that's the role of AI. I think when we talk about this, blocking out the human piece is it's the scary talk. You know, it's the what if this happens. I think there's a whole piece that's going to keep everything moving for a good many years, but it's not mainstream media to talk about that because it's not scary. It's more logical,
Right.
right? It's more like, hey, this is going to create stability in your business or in your sales process if this piece can be not only automated but then forecasted. So I think that those are some of the positive things. I know we're going back to that previous conversation, but that
Yeah.
was on my mind.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think that when it's just a fear of uncertainty, but I guess we have to have a little bit more optimism of human nature and finding our
Yeah,
way. And
absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
everything will be just fine. Speaking of paper, was there a book that you read that might have changed the trajectory of your life or like made you look at things a little bit differently?
Yeah, years ago, it was The Magic of Thinking Big. That one really opened my eyes. I was probably in that tech world, just be like, this
Yeah.
connects to this, you connect this cable. And then when I read that one, is a little bit more of the people side. And I was like, wow, that made me open up to bigger organizational things, bigger
Yeah.
ideas with more
Yeah.
people. So yeah, that was it. That
And
that was definitely the game changer.
I could definitely relate to that. Recently I kind of changed careers. Obviously, this podcast is it's fun. It's not a career for me, but I'm focused on real estate, and I tend to get myself involved in like smaller projects and distractions. And I definitely could relate to like wanting to think big picture of not only career wise, but just happiness wise, right? What can I do to make myself happy and and do what's best for my family? So I could definitely relate to that, and I appreciate your bringing that up as well.
Yeah,
Um,
that is a very important piece, especially when you get older. You start to think like, okay, I've worked this hard for this piece. Okay,
yes,
where can I get a little bit of fulfillment out of, you know, chat GPT? No, that doesn't work, right? Like it doesn't fill that void. You start thinking about the traveling and smiles on your kids' faces and wife's
yeah,
face, and you think, okay, that's valuable. At least right now where I am in my life, that's more important. And
yeah,
it's like the people piece again.
yeah,
I think the main thing though is don't lose that. Don't go too far into the work side when you're younger because you can still have those two things, right? You can still
right,
enjoy all of those. And I think that's sometimes why they do those. Hey, let's get together, and they, at workplaces, they skate around on the scooters or they go to play golf or something because they're trying to say, let's do both of those at the same time, right? We're
yeah,
working all this tech, and you lose those people, relationships, smiles, and fun things. Let's do those while we work in the tech, and we can
Yeah.
get there further. You don't have, let's less burnout, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it goes back to balance, right? Finding the
it
balance,
does.
finding a balance, whether it's AI, with there's day to day, with your relationships, find that balance that works for you. And really
Absolutely.
it starts with with listening to this podcast and just understanding, okay, where am I in the world? Where am I in my happiness level? Where am I with what I want to be? And making sure we're taking the steps to get there. So
Yep.
appreciate that. This was very enlightening for me. I appreciate your time. One last question before we let you go. How can people follow you or get in touch with you? Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, yeah, on all the major social platforms. So Tweeva, we have a tool in Tweeva that we can post to the top 10 social networks. So we are literally on all the top 10 social networks. So anywhere, just type in TWEVA and hit a follow or send us a message, and we'd love to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was
Hope
awesome.
you had as much fun as I did.
Oh, I did. Love it.
Awesome. Take care now.
You too.